My name is Jason, and I am 38 years old, though it feels as though life has aged me beyond my years. There was a time, not too long ago, when I walked with a clear sense of direction, filled with ambition, hope, and faith. Each day had a purpose. Every step seemed to lead me closer to something profound. But somewhere along the way, that light within me began to fade. Disappointments piled up, and each struggle took a piece of me, until all that was left was a hollow emptiness. At first, I tried to ignore the darkness growing inside, masking it with smiles, with laughter, with a facade of strength. I showed up for my family and friends, pretending to be the person they believed me to be. But each encounter only deepened the reminder of what I had lost within myself. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, and the emptiness grew, pressing down on me like a weight that I could neither lift nor ignore. Desperate for an escape, I turned to drinking, thinking that it would numb the storm inside. Cigarettes became a habit, a ritual that filled the empty spaces of my days, a brief distraction from the reality I wanted to avoid. But these escapes were fleeting, leaving me even more lost once their effects wore off. My family and friends began to seem like strangers, distant figures from a life I barely recognized. Each passing day became a slow descent, an agonizing drift into a darkness I couldn't escape. One night, sitting alone in my room, the silence was deafening. The walls seemed to close in on me. The air felt heavy, suffocating. I wanted to scream, but what would it change? I felt trapped, desperate, and utterly alone. The thought began to form, whispering in my mind, "Maybe if I leave this world, I'll finally find peace." The decision felt final, and as I closed my eyes, I thought I'd be stepping into an endless release from this pain. But what awaited me was far from peace. It was the beginning of a journey that would strip away every illusion I had ever held. As my consciousness faded, I braced myself for the silence, the nothingness I had expected. Instead, I found myself waking to a new and terrifying reality. My eyes opened to an expanse of darkness, deeper and colder than any night I had ever known. It was a void, a boundless emptiness that pressed down on me from all sides, as if the very essence of life and warmth had been stripped away. I tried to move, but each motion felt thick and slow, as though I were submerged in an invisible, suffocating substance. My limbs felt paralyzed, my breath shallow and labored. Panic surged as I tried to scream, to make any sound, but my voice was swallowed by the crushing silence. I stood frozen, the darkness pressing in, endless and unrelenting. I realized then that this place was not the escape I had imagined. There was no comfort here, no relief, only an all-encompassing isolation that magnified every regret and fear I had ever known. My mind raced, desperately seeking some sense of direction, some way to understand this place. I took hesitant steps forward, hoping for escape, but each step felt like wading through thick mud, dragging me deeper. The hopelessness grew with each moment, intensifying until I thought I would collapse under its weight. In this place, memories of my former life felt like distant echoes, barely more than whispers. The pain I had hoped to leave behind was here too, amplified by the eerie silence. There was no peace, no end, only a new kind of suffering, more vivid and unyielding than anything I had ever known in life. As I wandered through the darkness, I sensed shadows flickering at the edges of my vision. Gradually, they took form, transforming into twisted, human-like shapes, each one bearing a unique agony. These weren't just shadows, they were souls, each one a prisoner of its own desires, tormented by the very passions that had consumed them in life. The first figures I encountered were those ruled by pride. Their faces were contorted, their expressions twisted by the weight of their egos, which now imprisoned them. They seemed haunted, forever under an invisible, judgmental gaze, burdened by the pride that had once made them feel invincible. Now, that same pride was their tormentor, stripping them of any remaining dignity and trapping them in a state of constant regret. Next, I saw souls frantically grasping at piles of gold and jewels, treasures that crumbled to dust the moment they touched them. Their greed had become an insatiable hunger, a cycle of longing that left them perpetually empty. No matter how much they reached, everything slipped away, deepening their suffering and frustration. Further on, I saw others with hollow eyes, empty sockets where their gaze should have been. These were the envious, those who had spent their lives consumed by jealousy, forever yearning for what others possessed. Here, there was nothing to covet, nothing to fulfill their desires. They wandered aimlessly, plagued by a loneliness that could never be soothed, each step a reminder of their endless, unsatisfied craving. Finally, I came upon those consumed by lust and desire, their bodies engulfed in unquenchable flames, a punishment that mirrored the passions they had pursued in life. They reached out desperately, hoping to satisfy an insatiable hunger, but each moment brought new flames, an agony of endless longing that consumed them from within. Each of these souls was trapped in a personal hell, tormented by the very desires that had ruled them in life. Watching them, I began to understand the consequences of a life without spiritual purpose, a life spent chasing desires that could never satisfy the soul. A chill ran through me as I realized how close I had come to ending up like them, bound in an endless cycle of regret. As I drifted through the realm of souls, lost in a sea of shadows and regrets, one figure stood out, illuminated by a faint, solitary light. His presence was unmistakable, Bruce Lee. But this was not the iconic, unshakable martial artist I had always revered. The man before me looked haunted, burdened by a sadness that seemed to weigh heavily upon his soul. His face bore lines of regret, his eyes were shadowed with sorrow, as though he had endured a struggle far deeper than any physical battle. As he met my gaze, I felt a flood of empathy, a strange connection between us that transcended words. Bruce's voice, once powerful and filled with confidence, now carried a soft, reflective tone, tinged with a sorrowful wisdom. "I spent my life seeking mastery," he began, "thinking that if I could just reach the pinnacle of my craft, I would find peace within myself." His words were laced with a quiet desperation, as if he had been holding them back for an eternity. He went on to share how his life's quest for perfection and discipline had once seemed like a noble pursuit, a path to a higher truth. "I believed that mastery would bring me closer to enlightenment, that my dedication to martial arts and philosophy would help me find harmony. But somewhere along the way, I lost myself," he admitted, his voice trailing off, as though the weight of the revelation was still new to him, even here. For a moment, he looked away, as if peering into memories he had spent lifetimes trying to escape. "I became so focused on my craft, on perfecting my body and mind, that I began to define myself only by my achievement. The more I pushed myself, the more distant I became from the peace I was searching for." His voice cracked slightly, and I saw his eyes glisten with tears. "I built my identity around my skill, my reputation, my strength, and in doing so, I forgot what it meant to truly know myself." His confession struck a deep chord in me. I felt as though he was holding a mirror to my own life, my own relentless pursuit of validation, power, and recognition. Here was a man the world had idolized, a man whose legacy inspired countless souls, including mine, to pursue greatness, yet he was haunted, unfulfilled, a prisoner of his own ambition. His life, his struggles, his regrets had become a cautionary tale, warning against the dangers of living for achievement alone, without nurturing the soul. As he spoke, Bruce's expression softened, and a sense of humility filled his face. "True mastery is not in the perfection of skill," he said, almost as if speaking to himself, "but in the humility to accept one's limitation, to find balance between the external world and the inner self." He looked at me, his gaze penetrating yet filled with a profound gentleness. I thought I was strong, but my strength only led me further from the peace I sought. My discipline became a wall between me and my own soul. In that moment, a wave of understanding washed over me. The emptiness, the dissatisfaction, the endless hunger for something more. It was all a result of my own pursuit of hollow goals, my own neglect of the soul's quiet needs. Bruce's words, spoken from a place of raw vulnerability, forced me to confront the reality of my own choices. I had, like him, been seduced by the allure of achievement, of success that could be measured and praised by others. I had ignored the quiet voice within, the voice that yearned not for recognition, but for peace and purpose. Bruce's voice softened even further, his tone becoming almost paternal. "Jason," he said, "there is a way to live that brings true fulfillment. It doesn't lie in success or fame, but in knowing oneself and being at peace with who you are, beyond titles and achievements. It is in finding love, humility, and faith within." His words resonated through me, a revelation that shattered the illusions I had built my life upon. He took a deep breath, as if letting go of a burden that had weighed on him for far too long. "The path to true peace," he whispered, "is not in the mastery of the external world, but in surrendering to the journey within. It is in recognizing that life's greatest victory is the quiet acceptance of one's own imperfection." As he finished speaking, I felt a profound shift within myself, a stirring that felt like the first light after a long, dark night. In Bruce's sorrowful confession, I had found the key to my own salvation. His words, spoken from a place of deep regret and wisdom, unlocked a door in my heart that I hadn't even known was there. The weight of my own regrets began to lift as I absorbed his message. I realized that my worth wasn't measured by the success or recognition I achieved, but by the love, humility, and purpose I brought to each day. Bruce's message echoed in my mind, a call to abandon the endless pursuit of validation and to seek instead the peace that lay within, a peace I had long neglected. In that moment, I felt the warmth of forgiveness, for Bruce, for myself, for the lives we had both lived chasing shadows instead of substance. His words lingered, a guiding light that would stay with me as I found my way back to life, forever changed by the encounter. As I stood there, struggling with the revelations around me, I felt a gentle pull lifting me from the darkness. Light seeped into my vision, filling every empty corner of my soul with warmth. Before I knew it, I was back in my body, lying on a hospital bed, the sterile lights and hum of machines around me. The experience felt surreal, yet undeniably real. I had been given a second chance, a chance to change my life. I realized how close I had come to losing everything, how my pursuit of fleeting pleasures had nearly led me to destruction. Now, I understood that life wasn't meant to be spent chasing illusions of power and success. Life was a gift, an opportunity to connect with something deeper, to live with purpose and compassion. I resolved to honor this second chance, to realign my life with the values I had once cast aside. Every day after that experience felt like a blessing. I no longer took anything for granted. I no longer chased after shallow pleasures or sought validation in the eyes of others. Instead, I embraced each moment with gratitude, seeking to live a life filled with meaning and purpose. I reached out to those I had pushed away, mending relationships I had neglected. I found comfort in prayer, in moments of quiet reflection, and in reconnecting with my faith. The things I had once dismissed as unimportant became the foundation of my new life. My journey to the edge of existence had changed me forever. Fame, wealth, and recognition no longer held the same allure. They were shadows, illusions that had once clouded my vision. Now, I sought a life grounded in humility, love, and spiritual connection. I realized that life is fragile, each breath a gift. My experience had shown me that true peace lay beyond material pursuits, in aligning oneself with deeper values. I vowed to live each day with intention, to honor this second chance, and to be a light in a world often overshadowed by darkness.